You're watching IGN Live. The future of indie games is looking brighter than ever, and the folks at IGN Xbox are a huge part of that. Here to tell me about it is Charla, GM of Portfolio and Planning at Xbox, Zhenghua Yang, CEO of Serenity Forge, and Gregory, Director of Marketing at Xbox. Welcome, guys.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
So, earlier today, we saw the Super Meat Boy 3D trailer. Let's take a look. Wow, guys. I gotta ask, how does it feel to bring such an iconic Xbox Live Arcade title into a new era with Super Meat Boy 3D?
It's awesome. Like, when you think about the old Xbox Live Arcade days on Xbox 360, Super Meat Boy is one of the most iconic games, right? It just sort of defined that generation of gaming, going from, the old days where everything had to be on a disc to just like visceral, have fun. And so to see like this new version coming into 3D, modern consoles, just super rad. And like, seeing all the ghosts and seeing all the blood, and it's cool.
That's awesome. Chris, help me set the stage. What was the landscape like for independent games in the early days of consoles?
Yeah, it was really interesting because luckily or unluckily, I remember the early days of consoles really well. And it used to be really hard, right? Independent developers couldn't get access to dev kits. If you wanted to make a game, it had to be manufactured on a cart or on a CD-ROM, which meant you needed a bunch of money to like build the things and have trucks to take them to stores and have a team of marketers to talk to each store. And it was really hard. And so as a result, independent developers, and I was one at the time, you typically, you sort of worked on licensed titles, based on movies and that kind of thing. And it was really hard to feel like, you had all these ideas you wanted to explore, but you couldn't get your shot, right? And so what Microsoft did with Xbox Live Arcade, enabling these digitally downloadable titles, which now seems obvious, but at the time was this huge innovation, was like, you didn't need all that. The games, they couldn't be big because of download speeds and things like that. Originally, they were like under 50 megs. But you didn't need a box, you didn't need a distributor, you didn't need a publisher. And so once folks saw that, you just saw this huge flowering of amazing ideas, whether it's a Super Meat Boy or a Below or, Castle Crashers. And people responded super well. I think we were talking backstage. Super Meat Boy was kind of like the first game where like really blew up beyond people who were really into games. It was the first time like maybe your mom had heard of like a downloadable game. But that flowering of creativity has not slowed down since, right? Like obviously we have download limits up now and whether it's, the new Super Meat Boy or your new game, like it's just blowing up. And we're like, I used to say there's this golden age of indie games that started in 2008, but we're still in it. And now it's like 15, I don't know how long ago that was, almost 20 years ago, and we're still seeing like amazing, super cool stuff come from indie developers like every single day.
That's awesome. So talk to me about the introduction of Xbox Live Arcade. How much really did it change and how has that evolved through the years since then?
Well, it changed everything, right? And I still remember, like Xbox Live came on a CD-ROM. Like it came on a DVD, like it was a packaged thing that you bought. And Xbox Live Arcade, it had like Miss Pac-Man on the cover. But it totally changed it and it started to really democratize game development. And that just gave people the freedom they needed to do stuff. And so now it's, it feels like it's always been here, right? Obviously we download games on our phones, we download games on Steam, we download games everywhere. But like where it first started with Xbox Live Arcade is still, I don't know, still have a really warm place in my heart for those games.
That's awesome. Z, I would love to hear from you. From the developer perspective, how has the experience of publishing indie games evolved in your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like Chris was talking about, when I was just a kid, looking at video games that are out there being on consoles. Really, it was XBLA and Super Meat Boy that really kind of made me have that click, where it's like, oh, I don't have to just be a kid. I can actually be a video game developer, and that's kind of that's really the starting point of how a lot of this stuff started growing. I mean, for me, like it's about building that confidence to be able to start making games, looking at what's currently out there and innovating upon that and keep on making more games on that. I mean, nowadays, if you look at it, anyone could be a game developer. Anyone could just pick up some software, be a part of the IGN Xbox program, and go out there and start releasing games on their PC on console platforms. So really, it has changed so much. And as a fan of games, as a gamer myself, you can kind of see that just as a consumer, that there's now tons of games out there for us to play, and just any kind of experience that you'll have available to you.
Yeah, like Chris said, it feels like we're still in that golden age always. Now, I want to learn a little bit more about Indie Selects. Talk to me about the curation process and why it's such an important part of indie distribution.
Yeah, I mean, so Indie Selects kind of came about from the team, ID Xbox, our indie dev, publishing group at Xbox. We're huge fans of indie games. We love to play them, and we wanted to really create a process where we could surface up stuff where, we've played it, we like it, we really enjoy it, and we know that the fans are going to really like it. So, I think of like Z's games, like Slay the Princess and, Doki Doki Literature Club, stuff that I play and completely has blown me away. And so we kind of created this program to have like a home for them where we could really showcase games that we want to put our seal of approval on to say, these are excellent, you're gonna really like them. And then also show some kind of hidden gems in there, things that people might not discover naturally, things from different parts of the world, that are maybe not, something that generally bubbles up to the surface, or, games that feature different themes or different cultures, things like that. So it's really been a process of like, the team going through the games, that are out there and finding ones that we think are special and different and that our fans are really going to like, and then creating a home for them where people know where to go and where to find them and where to discover them.
Z, back to you. I would love to hear the developer side of things. How do games and devs benefit from this curation process, and what does it mean to you as a developer and for the game to have that sort of indie seal of approval?
Absolutely. I mean, this is actually a super critical topic for game developers, game publishers that are all out there. I mean, as video games become easier to get into, right? Like as it becomes easier for us to have the tools to make games, the barrier of entry, the barrier of success in a lot of ways changes pretty drastically. I mean, in the beginning of game development, it is very technical focused. You have to figure out how engines work, you have to figure out how to program games and do graphics and all that stuff. But as the tools become more accessible to people like us developers, anyone can go make a game, which is amazing and super awesome. That kind of curation process changes. You're no longer being tested essentially by your ability to program, but more so your creativity, your ability to be able to come up with new things that people like. The Indie Selects program really kind of now becomes the focal point of what that is. For a developer publisher like ourselves, the Indie Select program really made a huge difference on us. It really made it so that the platform and our communities are being able to be supported a lot better. And ever since it was announced, we've been huge fans of it. And today you can see that it really makes a meaningful difference across the board in our company.
Amazing. Now, as part of the selection process, obviously, we need to sort of have a thumb on what players are looking for. What sort of factors would you say make players excited about indie games, and have those factors changed over time?
Yeah, so I think that over time, when we look at how games have developed and how indie games have developed and what's being brought to the community, there's so many great different genres, different kind of subgenres, different experiences that have kind of emerged. That it's creating this wealth of experiences for everybody. So it's created a little bit of a challenge in terms of people finding what they like, amongst those kind of different experiences. But I think for a gamer, it's just like you're kind of almost in the golden age of it right now, because you can play anything from the most obscure, short experience to something like Vampire Survivors, which is on its surface a very simple game, but something that you can play for hundreds and hundreds of hours. So it's a great opportunity. It's also a challenge for making sure that you can find the right sort of content that you really like and that you want to get into.
Z, I would like to hear about some of the innovations that you're seeing in indie games nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when it comes to indie games, in the beginning, I think a lot of the innovations came from thinking about ways to kind of improve on what's currently out there. Which obviously in the beginning of indie gaming, that was kind of easy to do because a lot hasn't been done, but also very difficult because you have no idea what you're basing yourself off of, right? So you see a lot of very innovative things. I remember the early days of kind of Steam and also Humble, right? Like you can really get a lot of cool stuff. But then I think as time goes on, it's almost like this Wild West start turning into kind of very predefined things. From our approach nowadays, a lot of it kind of goes back to that kind of creativity. It's not just necessarily about what is the next thing, because everybody is thinking about it, but more so like what do people want, and also what do people want but they don't really realize yet. I think when we think about games, the Serenity Forge vision really is that we want to create meaningful and emotionally impactful experiences that challenge the way you think. When we look at games, we don't really look at other video games as much, but more so kind of life experiences. It could be coming from food, it could be coming from film, it could be coming from literature, and overall thinking about like what are these experiences doing for society as a whole, and what are these experiences generating inside you, emotionally, and how do we capture that and put it into a game? That's really how we focus on things.
That sounds awesome. Glenn, looking towards the future, what would you say the next 5 years will look like for Indie Selects?
Yeah, I think when we think about Xbox, we're talking a lot these days about having your experience that you want on the device that you want, and where playing how you want. So you think about if you're playing a game on Xbox and you can pause it and then you can continue on Windows, Xbox Store on Windows, or on a mobile device, something like that. I think we want to try and take what we're doing with Indie Selects on the console and expand that across all of these endpoints, these different experiences where people play games. So you'll see us in the relatively near future expanding what we're doing on console to the Xbox Store and Windows, and eventually to handheld and other devices, and really just trying to surface up the kind of content that we think players are going to enjoy and put it in front of people. And then obviously we think the indie gaming space is going to continue to explode. We think that there's a lot of interest in it. There's an incredible amount of talent in it, and lots of great ideas coming forward. And so as we continue to work with these indie developers, we're going to try and create additional opportunities. I think that's really what people like Chris and myself, what gets us motivated to go to work every day, is to say, hey, this game is amazing. Oh my gosh, there's all these players out there who think are going to love it. How can we get it in their hands? How can we tell them this is the game that you should be checking out? And so we're going to be looking at the different opportunities to bring that across all of our different devices within our ecosystem, and even working outside of our ecosystem if we can.
See, looking at the other side of things, within that same time frame, what do you think the next 5 years will look like for the developers? Or sorry, for the publishers?
Sorry, could you repeat that for a second?
How do you see Indie Selects at the within the same time frame, what do you see for the future of indie publishers?
Yeah. I think indie publishing landscape has been changing for quite a bit. I think in the beginning of indie game development and publishing, there's a lot that really isn't accessible to developers. Like, for example, dev kits, right? Like, being able to have the ability to port your game onto consoles, being able to have the, kind of accessibility to market your game on a bigger stage. I think over the years, we have definitely seen a lot of changes in that landscape. I still remember when I was, working in a small team in a basement somewhere, sending emails to Xbox and getting our Xbox One dev kits. And we're like, really? You just do that? Right? That's a big moment. And really, from that point onwards, years down the road now, you start to see every step of the way, it's easier for developers to get into publishing. So really, from my perspective, when it comes to indie publishing, well, first of all, indie publishing is now accessible, way more accessible to everyone. Like, everyone is now developing development and also self-publishing ourselves, like for example. But also on top of that, indie publishing kind of changes into more of a bespoke or moldable model, where it's less about, oh, here's a publisher that comes in to just write you a check and do all this stuff for you, but more so kind of as a service, as almost like a support group for developers on like how can we support you in the sense that we can get your game and solve all the problems that you have as much as possible. I mean, we were just talking about how as consoles and as platforms become more widespread, more diverse, more everywhere, right? It makes it so that indie publishing just completely changes that you have to kind of support it in different ways. And I think, from my perspective, that's always been kind of our model is how can we as a publisher be the best support group for the people that's out there, that are actually doing the innovative creations, actually making the games.
Chris, I want to finish with you. How do you see Indie Selects at the forefront of indie games for fans?
Yeah, I think the thing that we're always thinking about is how can we help players find games they want? And also, how can we help publishers and developers find the players they want, right? And so I see, what we've done with Indie Selects and what Glenn and his team have built with Indie Selects is just this awesome first step at making sure that we're really highlighting really cool games that people, they might find other ways, but they might not. And so why not, take some space on our store and make sure people are seeing these things. And, we have such huge support throughout Xbox for this. I hope this isn't saying anything, but like Phil votes on the games like every month. He's always excited to say like, oh, I played it. This is great. That kind of thing. And so in terms of what changes I see in the future, our guiding principle is always going to be like, how do we connect like publishers with great players and players with great games? And I think you'll see us make some changes in the future. I think you'll see us try different things. But the point is always just like just thinking about all the resources that we have at Xbox and how we can use them to both help players just make sure they're finding games that are both in the genres they love and games they know they're going to love, but also things that, finding your next favorite genre, finding a genre or a game type that you maybe never would have tried, but like once you do try it, like, holy cow, like I got to go show this to somebody. And then at the same time, helping publishers with this amazing Xbox audience and our amazing fans say like, oh, well, actually, you've got, a game like this, like, let me show you this group of people and they're going to be stoked on it. And so that's just what we're always trying to do. Like, it's hard to predict, like, are we going to change the oak leaf cluster? I don't know, but I know that we're always just going to be thinking about connecting players and awesome games.
Awesome. Guys, thank you all so much for joining me. You can check out the whole ID at Xbox catalog wherever you get your Xbox games. We've got plenty more IGN Live ahead, so keep watching.